As I update my rankings, I'm looking at these guys and figuring out who should we be getting excited about based off their week one performances. Now, I know everybody just wants to chase who scored the most points, but actually, I really think it's important to look at the underlying volume and usage below just the total fantasy points scored for each one of these options. So we're going to look at running backs and wide receivers, and I'm going to give you my excitement level 1 to 10, 10 being most excited, 1 being least excited. Starting off with Bijan Robinson, solid 6 out of 10, right? Just because it's hard for him to move that much further up in the rankings. He's already sitting there at RB3. Obviously, we are going to see what CMC and Brees do tonight. Maybe Bijan can move up a spot or two. Now, Bijan week one with no Arthur Smith immediately came out and set a career high with his snap rate. He played 50 out of the potential 56 snaps here in Atlanta. That is absolutely massive. If you're looking at the volume that he had as well, Bijan Robinson comes out, and while yes, he only has 68 rushing yards, he has 18 carries. And most importantly, in a full PPR league, he's giving you the receiving skill set that we saw back at Texas Hook 'em Horns. He gives you 5 receptions for 43 receiving yards off of 5 targets in a game where, Atlanta has a very tough time moving the ball down the field against a very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. So if we expect that the Atlanta Falcons offense is maybe a little bit better going into the future, and Bijan Robinson's going to continue to see 90% of this backfield, this is a floor game for Bijan, and you can see 30-plus point performances coming very, very soon. Now, going over to a running back that's also a 6 out of 10 because it's hard for him to move that much further up. You have Saquon Barkley. With Barkley, the concerns that you would potentially have had in Philadelphia, 1, regarding Jalen Hurts vulturing rushing touchdowns, and 2, maybe having a lower checkdown rate overall. But really, it looks like those concerns may have been overblown because week 1, you have 3 touchdowns for Saquon Barkley. You draw a couple targets out of the backfield as well. So I'm actually going to update my rankings. I'm going to take an L. I had Jonathan Taylor, who actually does see 100% of the carries in Indianapolis, but nothing as a receiver. But anyway, I had Taylor ahead of Saquon, and I'm going to be moving Saquon Barkley ahead of Jonathan Taylor now. I'm actually going to be moving Saquon Barkley ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs as well, and I think Saquon Barkley should be ranked at minimum as RB4 rest of season at this point. Now, going over to Devon Achane. Achane's excitement level up at a 7. And we talked about this time and time again. But with Achane, with his size, he can't get to 20, 25 touches a game. It just simply can't happen. We've never seen it before. What you needed to see from Devon Achane is you needed to see a massive expansion in his role as a receiver so he can turn into prime Alvin Kamara and also get work at the goal line. We already talked about it, but that's exactly what happens here in Miami, where Achane's actually the 3rd leading receiver in this offense with 7 receptions, 476 receiving yards. And while, yes, he only has 24 rushing yards, he comes away with the rushing touchdown, and he gets every snap at the goal line. So it does look like Achane is turning into that prime Alvin Kamara. Now, I had Achane ranked behind Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor this season. If I'm looking to update my rankings, I don't know if we can put Achane ahead of JT just based off week 1. I'm definitely thinking about it though. And if we have another very strong performance from Achane where he takes everything at the goal line and Raheem Mostert gets nothing, then at that point, I think I would go ahead and move Achane above JT. Now, week 1, I had a lot of good calls. I had a lot of bad calls. Thankfully, Underdog actually hooked it up with so many promos that I actually ended up winning $150 with my pick'ems week 1. You can see the video here, and they're running it back with an insane amount of promos as well this week. So y'all know I'm usually not the massive pick'em guy, but you have to take advantage of these. You have a no sweat pick'em for Tuesday, so you can submit it. Even if you lose, you get the money back. CeeDee Lamb, they're dropping a free more than less than half a total pick on Wednesday. Thursday, you have a 30% profit boost. Friday, you have a surprise special promo. Saturday, you have college football discounts. And Sunday, you have NFL discounts. So I highly recommend you taking advantage of this, getting in on all the ridiculous promotions they're offering. And if you use code FLOCK with the link in the description or the comment section, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. And at the same time, I will actually review your team for you in a live stream on flockfantasy.com. Just make sure you use code FLOCK with the link in the description and comment section. Now let's move over to our next back. Now this was a bad call that I had in week 1, and that is benching Ramondre Stevenson. Now I'm happy I traded for Ramondre. Looks like he's actually going out there and crushing it. you're looking at a running back that has the vast majority of the backfield over Antonio Gibson. Ramondre Stevenson plays 51 snaps in comparison to Antonio Gibson at 13. Ramondre gets the only snap at the goal line. Ramondre plays 9 snaps on third down in comparison to Antonio Gibson at 3. This is all PFF data right here and PFF charts. But regardless, I want to get extremely excited. I want to say Ramondre Stevenson high-end RB2 rest of season. And he's on my team. Like I said, I'm for sure playing him this next week. But my hesitation with Ramondre Stevenson is, one, Antonio Gibson was a game time decision. Dude didn't even know if he was going to play, dealing with an injury headed into this contest. And 2, at the same time, this is a game where the New England Patriots win and they pretty much control it from start to finish. I don't know how many games New England is going to be ahead. I don't know how many games New England's going to win. And there is that outside chance that if you have Antonio Gibson a little bit healthier, that all of a sudden he does have a larger role on third down and in the 2-minute drill. So Stevenson definitely going from like a borderline flex play for me to a consistent RB2. But I don't want to come out here and act like, oh, all of a sudden he's a league winner just based off week 1. I think it's maybe a little bit of a fluky game from a New England Patriots perspective. And then our next running back will be Joe Mixon. Excitement level 8 out of 10 here. I mean, yes, he doesn't have everything on third down. I mean, if you're actually looking at the third down usage and in the 2-minute drill, Joe Mixon only had 3 out of a potential 17 snaps. So maybe from a full PPR perspective, you don't want to come out here and go just all in on Mixon. But even with the usage just on early downs, he does still draw 3 targets out of the backfield. But it's hard not to just be so damn excited when you see the stat line: 30 carries, 159 rushing yards, and the rushing touchdown. You had 40 carries in this Houston Texans backfield in comparison to 32 CJ Stroud pass attempts. Now, to be honest with you, I don't necessarily think this is going to be the game plan for the Houston Texans every single week going into the future. I think this is possibly just a little bit due to the overall game environment and the game plan that they had going up against Indianapolis. But to see Mixon look this good, and also, like we said, he is much younger than the other running backs that were seen as quote-unquote older options, such as Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry. I think it is a positive note, and Joe Mixon probably will be a low-end RB1 for me in my rankings this next week. And then our last running back we'll talk about before we go over to the receivers will be J.K. Dobbins. Full transparency with you, I didn't draft J.K. Dobbins in my league. I didn't even take him in many best ball drafts, so maybe I could be like everybody else who didn't draft J.K. Dobbins, and I could say, oh, he's going to get hurt in week 4. I didn't draft him because he's going to get... No, you can't do that. You can't justify making a bad decision on not taking J.K. Dobbins by just saying you knew he was going to be good, but he's going to get hurt. No, you had no idea that Dobbins was going to look this good week 1. I mean, the man makes a couple big plays, 135 rushing yards, 10 carries. And what's very surprising, it shouldn't be that surprising, but Dobbins does have pretty much everything on third down, everything in the 2-minute drill as well. Now, he does come away with only 4 receiving yards, but that's off of 3 receptions. So Dobbins isn't a phenomenal pass catcher, but Gus Edwards is a very bad receiving back. So Dobbins looks like all of a sudden he's going to be the third down back at the minimum. And at the same time, based off the efficiency that we saw Dobbins have as a rusher and the inefficiency that we had from Gus Edwards, I think that there is that outside chance that J.K. Dobbins just expands his role here as well. So Dobbins went from, I can't even consider starting him week 1 to now in week 2, I'll probably be ranking him as a low-end RB2 / high-end RB3, maybe somebody that you consider in your flex. But let's go over to wide receiver. Now, Stephon Diggs obviously comes out and he scores pretty much all the points for these Houston Texans receivers. He has 6 receptions, 33 receiving yards, multiple receiving touchdowns, where I love it for my teams. In best ball drafts, I took a lot of Stephon Diggs. Now, I didn't take him in the flock league. Sadly, I had to play against him there. But nonetheless, it'd be very good for me if Stephon Diggs comes out and he dominates the rest of the season in Houston. But I actually saw this tweet, which goes through and illustrates the way that these wide receivers were getting used. And if you look at the intended air yards that you had for Nico Collins, Tank Dell versus Stephon Diggs, you actually had Tank Dell and Nico Collins as the guys operating deeper downfield that have more big play potential. Where Stephon Diggs was just a lot closer to line of scrimmage. He only had 9 intended total air yards this week. So that is insane. And at the same time, while I was expecting Diggs to play significantly more than Tank Dell, and I mean, he kind of did. He played 62 snaps in comparison to Tank Dell at 51. If you look at the routes run data, there's not a big difference there. There it's only 35 to 34. So they run the same amount of routes. I mean, pretty much the same amount of routes as Nico Collins as well. So I would love to say Diggs is going to crush. Diggs is the wide receiver one in Houston. But the reality is, I don't think much has changed. I think Diggs just probably got lucky with the touchdowns this week. Now, going over to Tampa, we're going to include Mike Evans here as a riser. Now, obviously, it's not like much happens. This is a typical Mike Evans game, 2 receiving touchdowns, 61 receiving yards. And we're going to be very brief with this. The Bucs offense looks great. With Evans, he's always a little bit discounted in comparison to what he did the year prior, strictly because you're always wondering, can he keep it up? He's going into year 11. You look at all these other wide receivers that were drafted in 2014 that had strong careers early on but have been completely washed out. You go through and look at Odell Beckham Jr., Sammy Watkins, Allen Robinson, Jarvis Landry. Possibly you want to throw Brandon Cooks into here. You see Devontae Adams declining as well. So Mike Evans discounted year in and year out because people are afraid that the fall is going to come for him. Based off week 1, looks like that may not be the case here. It looks like based off week 1, Mike Evans is just going to be the same consistent option that he has been for years. Now, Jameson Williams is a wide receiver that has such a big game that I have people in real life that I know texting me asking about him. And y'all know I've been very consistent with Jameson Williams from the time he came into the NFL to now, that I think he can be a good real life NFL wide receiver by stretching NFL defenses, creating space underneath for Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and the running game in Detroit. But when you're looking at those deep threat field stretching options, typically they're going to be extremely volatile from a week-to-week perspective with a high ceiling, however, an extremely low floor. So in an underdog best ball draft, maybe that's somebody that you're excited to take. However, in your regular fantasy football draft, it's going to be very difficult to know when you should start Jameson Williams. Like, to be honest with you, am I excited to run and throw Jameson Williams into my flex spot this week? No, right? I think I would be very hesitant to do just that. Now, to be fair to Jameson, not only does he have the long receiving touchdown, not only does Jameson Williams have 121 receiving yards, the 5 receptions, and the receiving touchdown, but he also leads this team in targets. He has 9 targets in comparison to Amon-Ra St. Brown at 6, in comparison to Jahmyr Gibbs at 6, and Sam Laporta at 5. So I think you have to say that Jameson is a very exciting riser. I have my excitement level here at a 7 out of 10. But I just do want to be very clear. I don't know if much has changed here. I don't know if all of a sudden this is this massive Jameson Williams bounce back or breakout, and he's going to be somebody that you can start every single week. I mean, I would need maybe another week or two to see this consistently. Now, I'm going to throw some of the tight ends in here as well. Brock Bowers is going to be at a 7 out of 10 in his excitement level. I think if you look at how we are going to update my rest of season rankings over there on flockfantasy.com, it's going to be very difficult to find players that should be ahead of Brock Bowers at the tight end position, just with the tight end apocalypse that you are currently dealing with the injury to Jake Ferguson, with the injury to David Njoku, with Evan Ingram doing absolutely nothing. Like, I could very easily see Brock Bowers a month from now being a top 5 tight end in fantasy. This 1 week, yes, Gardner Minshew has a decent day throwing the football, 257 passing yards, only 1 passing touchdown. However, if you look at Bowers has 8 targets in this offense in comparison to Devontae Adams at 6. Bowers being a rookie tight end, obviously one of the best tight end prospects I've ever seen. Probably the only better prospect I've seen is Kyle Pitts, but that doesn't really matter for this conversation. He's an elite prospect. He comes in, immediately has a role week 1. What's very surprising is while he leads this team in targets with 8, he actually only runs 31 routes. That's 31 routes out of a potential 40 dropbacks. He only plays 41 snaps in comparison to Devontae Adams at 58. So I think you're going to see that Bowers actually expands his role as the season goes on. And this is going to be someone that, I mean, is rising up my rankings in a dramatic way, not only because he has a very strong NFL debut, but at the same time, the rest of the position just looks so much worse. Now, our next receiver is going to be Xavier Worthy. We're going to throw the excitement level 7 out of 10. If you are looking at Worthy, obviously, everything comes with the touchdowns. You have the 35-yard receiving touchdown. You have the rushing touchdown to go along with that. Worthy demonstrates the speed in what appears to be, yet again, the league's best or one of the league's best teams. Now, of course, I want to say hook 'em horns. I'm all in. Worthy's only getting better. It's only up from here. And I will say, I think Worthy is going to expand his role in this offense. I mean, if you go through and look at the fact that he only had, say, 3 targets this week, which ties with Noah Gray, which is, I mean, only one more than Samaje Perine. I think it's safe to say that if we see Mahomes have to throw the ball a little bit more, there will be more targets going in the direction of Xavier Worthy. But Hollywood Brown is also about to come back into this offense. And y'all know we deemed Hollywood as one of the most overdrafted players in fantasy early in the offseason. We were taking Worthy instead. So I would love it if Hollywood is completely irrelevant, if he's completely washed, and it's only Worthy expanding his role from here on out. I don't know if that's going to be the case, though. And if all of a sudden we have Worthy, say, going from 3 targets a game to 5 to 6 targets a game, I still do think that's going to be a volatile player from a week-to-week perspective that's very difficult to just lock and load into your starting lineup, unlike someone like Rashee Rice, where it looks like Rashee Rice is just an automatic starter with all the volume in the world. So Worthy's very exciting. Obviously, he has to move up our rankings here. I'm not ranking him immediately as a top 24 wide receiver, though. I do think that he's still going to be a borderline flex play. I want to see the volume come up, and I wouldn't mind also seeing another big game from a fantasy perspective. Now, going back over to tight end, Isaiah Likely, we've already talked about him a ton, an inch away from literally having 10x the amount of points of Mark Andrews this week, an inch away of pretty much scoring more points than every tight end in the NFL combined this week. Freaking insane. He has 12 targets, 111 receiving yards, the receiving touchdown, 9 receptions. And it could have been an even better day. If you look at the usage, he runs 35 out of a potential 51 routes. I think that we could possibly see this expand. I know a lot of people are screaming at me saying, Mason, watch the Mark Andrews snaps. He was double covered every play. Mason, he got in an accident 3 weeks ago. Mason, he wasn't at practice. I don't know. I don't think I'm overreacting to week 1 to just say the young ascending player that dominates the old veteran in front of him should create a lot of panic about the old veteran. It should create a lot of excitement for the young ascending player. I've already moved Isaiah Likely to tight end 12 in my rest of season rankings. After the game, I'm going to head over to flockfantasy.com, update him again later tonight. And honestly, I want to be surprised if he jumps up to be a top 10 tight end with the injury to Ferguson and Njoku rest of season. Now, the biggest riser this week, honestly, regardless of position, is Cooper Kupp. And it pains me. Cooper Kupp, I thought was a fine round 3 pick in underdog drafts. I was taking him there early in the season. When he got to round 2, which was about a month and a half ago, I stopped taking Cooper Kupp. I thought round 2, it was too steep of a price point. In the Flock League, he went at the 2-3 turn. I wasn't able to get him in the middle of the 3rd round. So I don't have a lot of Cooper Kupp. But to see what just happened week 1 makes you want to say that Cooper Kupp could very easily be the wide receiver 1 this season overall. We saw it happen 3 years ago. And now you have the Puka Nacua injury. At the time of this recording, we don't have a Puka update. Of course, as soon as that comes out, I'm going to be live streaming every single night. I'll talk about my updates and I'll give you my opinion every night. And at the same time, we'll be updating our rest of season rankings and our weekly rankings every single day on flockfantasy.com as well. But if Puka misses any time, I can tell you right now, Cooper Kupp will be a top 3 wide receiver in my rankings next week. He had 21 targets this week against Detroit, 14 receptions, 110 receiving yards, and the receiving touchdown. Matthew Stafford looks phenomenal. This offensive line completely collapsed. However, despite those circumstances, Stafford still looked great. Kupp led the NFL in targets by a wide margin. It's painful. I wish I had more Cooper Kupp. I wish I had him in the Flock League. What's funny enough is Tom, a developer of flockfantasy.com, has him in the Flock League and crushed Nathan in a Sunday night game where Nathan thought he was going to win. He had Puka, Tom had Kupp, and Nathan goes down to a developer, which is a sad, sad scene. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much. And I do want to remind y'all, please make sure you take advantage of all the promos Underdog's doing. I literally just went and did a promo every single day on Underdog last week, and I ended up winning $152. Tuesday, they have the no sweat pick'em. So even if you lose, get your money back. Wednesday, you have the CeeDee Lamb special pick'em dropping, more than less than half a total yard. Thursday, you have the 30% profit boost coming. Friday, you have a random promo that they're going to be dropping then. Saturday, you have college football discounts, and Sunday you have NFL discounts. So please make sure you take advantage. You can find that link in the description and the comment section. Code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, I will actually break down your fantasy football team for you for free on flockfantasy.com. All you have to do is have a flockfantasy.com account. It can be free with the same email address that you signed up to Underdog Fantasy with and made that $10 deposit. But I think that's all I have for you. Really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day. And I really hope I get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.